Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs and today I have this really beautiful floral watercolored slimline card. So let's jump right in. So as always, I like to cut down my base. I like to know what I'm going to work with, so that's usually where I start. And I am making a slimline card, so I'm going to cut 4 inches off of a standard piece of cardstock. And then I'm going to score it at the 3.5 mark. So I like to make my slimline cards 8.5 by 3.5 once they're scored. There's no exact size to this. This is just my preferred measurement, and that's just what I kind of stick to. But there's no wrong way to make your slimline card. This is just what I tend to do. And I just scored it in the middle, and then I'm going to stamp out the rose image from the Simon Says Stamp Spring Bouquet stamps. There's 2 bouquets in this stamp set, and I chose the roses. And I am using a piece of Arches Cold Press watercolor cardstock here. And because I'm going to white heat emboss on white cardstock or watercolor paper, you're not really going to be able to see it. So bear with me. You will kind of see it as we go along, but it's pretty difficult at this stage to really see it until like right now you're going to see some of the embossing powder when I hold it just right in the light. But otherwise it's kind of difficult to see. And I am going to stamp this out twice, and I did use an anti-static powder tool and my Versamark ink. And I'm just using the same cardstock or watercolor paper. This is just a scrap that I had out of my Arches pad. So I save all of the scraps because I love this cardstock so much that I'm pretty bad at hoarding it, and I try really hard to use it. But this card is actually from my mom. This is for her birthday, and yellow is her favorite color, and flowers. She loves flowers. So that's kind of the thought process here. It's for my mom's birthday. So that's where we're going to go. And we're actually going to watercolor, which is something that I don't do very often with actual watercolors. So here you can see I'm just going to melt the embossing powder until it's smoothly melted. So you can kind of see the emboss lines when I'm holding it up in the light. And then once you can't see them, you can tell that they're melted. They kind of go shiny. So on the left side there, you can kind of still see the image, whereas on the right side, it's pretty much disappeared until I hold it in the light just right to get kind of the shine. I can see it in person, but I know on the video it's kind of difficult to see until you hold it perfectly in the light. And I am going to bring in a stencil, and this is some pixie spray. I just have it in like a little box so that it's not going everywhere because I'm not standing outside in the middle of the night to do this. I tend to record my videos pretty late in the day, but I just used some pixie spray on this. It's the Pink Fresh Studios Diagonal Stripes stencil, and I just used some pixie spray so that the individual stripes in the center wouldn't move all over the place while I was trying to blend this. And I just brought in some Pumice Stone Oxide ink, and I'm just going to kind of blend across it. Now this isn't meant to be perfect. This is the background, so there are going to be areas that are darker, areas that are lighter. There's a little bit of an area where I didn't even put any color, just because this is the background, and I just really wanted it to be a bit, not patchy really, but kind of fade off into nothing. So in the final card, you'll see in the right hand corner at the bottom of the card that I kind of have faded off the color, and there's not really much there. You're going to actually see it here in a second when I lift up the stencil. But yeah, so you can kind of see at the bottom there that there's not very much color. But that's kind of what I was going for. And I did take and tape this down to my hardboard. Now, this is the Mijello Mission Gold watercolor palette, and I have mixed up a yellow, and I'm going to have 2 shades of yellow for this, mostly because I find it difficult to mix the exact same shade, and I didn't mix enough yellow the first time. So it's the bright yellow that comes in the palette, and a little bit of white mixed in, and a little bit of a darker, like the darker orange mixed in. You're going to see when we jump to, I'm not going to show you the watercoloring for both sets of flowers because I did it the exact same way, and I am going to kind of walk you through my process there, but with the color, I just kind of move back and forth. So I have a paintbrush that I use to mix up the watercolor. I have a paintbrush that I use just predominantly for putting down clean, clear water, and then I have a paintbrush for dragging the color out. I know this seems a little bit interesting as I have 3 paintbrushes going, but I find it's the easiest way for me to not waste a bunch of paint and not have it kind of be darker than I wanted it to be. I really wanted this to be a lighter watercolored look, which is something I struggle with. I have a tendency towards being very heavy-handed, being a bit less delicate in my colors, and I really wanted this to be kind of a softer, more whimsical coloring. So that's kind of the thought process there. So yeah, I just kind of jump between color, or between paintbrushes, sorry, I'm using the exact same color on all of the flowers on this side. And then when I mix up the second yellow, I'll use that on all 3 flowers on the other side. And in the end, I'm kind of glad that I kind of have a tonal difference. Oh, sorry, then my cat had to jump up there. I'm kind of glad I have a tonal difference between the 2 yellows in my watercoloring, because I think that it just adds some extra texture, like not texture, sorry, some extra wow, pizzazz to my card. And I know that it's fairly difficult to see here, but I'm only going petal per petal, and I'm just laying a little bit of, well, I'm doing a wet on wet technique. So I go in with my wet brush first, I add I add water, sorry, and then I go in with my mixed brush with all the paint in it, and just drop a little bit of paint into the center of the petal. And then I bring in the brush that is completely, it just has a little bit of water that I'm using it to kind of pull the color out a little bit. And then I just use that to pull the color out. And that's pretty much all we're doing. And now we're going to jump into the leaves. So you can see that I've mixed up a green now. And I'm just going to drop a little bit in, and I'm still doing a wet on wet technique. So I put water in the leaf first, and then I drop a little bit of color in the base of the leaf, and then I pull it out with my third paintbrush, and then I let the watercolor kind of do its own thing. And if I feel like it doesn't have enough color, or I don't like how it's kind of pulled out or dried, I go back in later and add a little bit more to the layers. So a watercolor is really beautiful that way, as you can just keep layering the colors on top of each other until you're happy with how it looks. So, I mean, it's kind of a thing you got to play with. I need to watercolor more often. I love the look, but I never really want to sit down and take all the time to do it. So I love how it turns out every time I do it, but I get kind of lazy. So here you can see that I'm just dropping in a little bit of a darker color at the base of the leaves, and this is more of a dry, like a dry technique. Like this isn't wet on wet at this point. I'm bringing in some color, and then I bring in my wet brush and just kind of blend it in a little bit. But it's not really gonna merge into the other color. It's just kind of adding some shadow and depth to the leaves. And then if there's any areas I didn't like the blend on, I just bring in my brush that I'm kind of blending the color out with, and I just add some more water. So, and then here you see I'm just dripping on some of the yellow watercolor that I've mixed up, and I've colored in both sides at this point. And then I bring in some Perfect Pearls that I have mixed up in a little mini mister bottle, and I'm going to flick that on just for added shine and shimmer in the background, and to kind of give that little bit of a whimsical look. I find that the splashes really help with kind of, if you feel like you've made any mistakes or you don't like the blend on perfectly, I find that this really helps kind of mask that. And I did also bring in a little bit of white gouache, just again to add some whimsy and some texture to the background. And I just flicked that on top of all of both sets of the bouquet. And then I am going to remove the tape so that we can take it off of the hardboard. This isn't really an exciting reveal, as it wasn't anywhere near the sides, and I wasn't really trying to build a border. But it's kind of nice to have the paper come up nicely. And then here you can see all that texture and splatter in the background, and the flowers really up close. I do actually have the matching dies for this set. That is one thing that I've been working on. I've kind of been collecting the matching dies for the Simon sets that I love, and this is one of them. So I'm going to put it through my Misti and cut it out two times. And my Misti. I'm going to put it through my Gemini, and I'm going to cut it. And I do actually have the full-size Gemini, but I use the Gemini Juniors plates. I find it a lot easier, a lot faster. They don't warp as much. And I've been loving this Magic Mat by Scrapbook.com, or Scrapbook.com, and their mint tape. I've got that here as well. And I've been loving the mat because it's stopping my plates from warping. So I've just really been enjoying not having to replace my plates as often. And then here I'm kind of just playing with my layout. I did do the gray oxide blending on the base. So there's no other panel in this. That is my card base. And then I'm kind of just going to lay out my images on top of that. So this is my first time using the 3M foam tape, and I have to admit that I was pretty excited about how it worked for me. I just recently got it in. This is the first card I've even used it on, and I love that it's so easy to rip. It's easy to pull the backing off of. The backing doesn't try to stick to me, which is one issue I've had with quite a few of the other foam tapes, is that I'm trying to remove the backing from the foam tape, and I find that it's trying to stick to me all the time, and I've got it flying everywhere, and it's sticking to everything because of static, and I just get frustrated with it. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm sure you guys are going to see it tons of times in my upcoming videos, and I just put a few small squares on the leaves that stick out, and you will see that I'm going to have to cut off some of the image because it does hang over and it wouldn't fit in an envelope otherwise, but I had no problem with that. I just used my Tim Holtz shears and trimmed off the leaves and whatnot that was stuck on the back. And I kind of played with trying to have the images be mirroring each other on each side of the card. It's not perfect, but honestly, I don't need it to be. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, and I think that my mom will love it. So I'm not too concerned that it's not, exactly mirrored or exactly perfect or whatever like that. So I'm pretty sure she'll love it regardless. And I am going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to add some foam tape, and I'm going to adhere it down as closely mirroring the other set of roses as possible. Again, I don't know that I did it perfectly, but again, I think that's okay. And this is where I bring in my shears, and I just flip it upside down and start trimming off any of the excess pieces that were hanging off. And I did try to kind of figure out a way to use these leaves because I had watercolored them, but I couldn't really find a way that I liked it. I considered sticking them inside, I considered sticking them behind the flowers, and I didn't find a way that I liked it in the design, so I kind of just left it that way. And I am going to stamp, you guys aren't going to see it because my head was in the way the whole time, because I should have stamped this before I adhered down my roses, but I didn't because I wasn't totally sure where I wanted it. So I just have a birthday wishes stamped there in the background, and it's just in a, I believe, mustard seed Distress Oxide, yeah. And I just stamped that down between the two flowers, and it just says birthday wishes. And then, yeah, I'm just adhering some icy sparkle gems from Studio Katia. And that's the card I have for you guys this week. I hope you like it as much as I do. I think that it turned out really beautiful, and I'd love to know what you think. I'd love if you'd consider subscribing. I do a new video every Monday, and join in on Hops whenever I can. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and I will see you guys again soon. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye for now.